Our stories are not real and made for entertainment purposes only. Subscribe to my channel for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. For 15 years, I lived a lie. A secret I buried so deep even my daughter never suspected the truth. But sometimes, the truth has a way of breaking free, unexpected, unstoppable. My name is James Carter. For most of my daughter's life, I was just the man who worked odd jobs, barely scraping by. The father who wasn't there when she needed me most. But what they didn't know was that I was hiding a past I ran from. A past that would change everything if it ever came to light. My daughter, Emma, trusted the image her mother painted that I was a failure, a man who gave up on his family. So when Emma's fiancé Mark learned who I really was, everything changed in a blink. Mark threw his engagement ring away, right in front of us all. I'm going to tell you how it happened, and why I waited 15 years to reveal the truth. I never thought the truth would catch up to me like this, not in a room full of champagne glasses and fake smiles. But before we get there, you need to understand how it all began. 15 years ago, I stood at the edge of a battlefield, not the kind with bullets flying. No, this one was in a courtroom. Gara sat across from me with her high-powered attorney, the kind who bills $1,200 an hour just to breathe. She wore black, like she was already attending the funeral of our marriage, cold, composed, cruel. I had just retired from government service after over a decade of working in black ops, doing things this country will never admit it needed. I'd seen war zones most people can't pronounce. I'd stopped things before they started. I'd buried secrets so deep even satellites couldn't find them. But none of that prepared me for family court. Your Honor, Clara's lawyer said, voice smooth like oil, we believe Mr. Carter, due to his classified and violent past, poses an emotional and possibly physical risk to the child. I opened my mouth to speak, to explain. But Clara didn't look at me. Not once. Emma, our daughter, was just 5. She was coloring in the hallway, clutching a stuffed giraffe I won for her at a fair. I looked at the judge and realized I'd already lost my entire past. My entire career, everything I had done for my country, was now being used to define me as a threat, not a protector. So I did the only thing that could protect my daughter. I walked away. I let Clara have full custody. I left without a fight, and I swore I'd never let Emma see me as the broken man they painted me to be. The years that followed, they were quiet, painfully quiet. I moved 3 states away, changed my name from Ethan Rourke to James Carter, bought a beat-up pickup, and started working under the table. Construction, security, whatever kept me off the grid. But I kept tabs on Emma. I knew her favorite subjects in school, that she played piano and hated math. I watched every recital on a grainy livestream I found by hacking into her school's website. I even mailed gifts anonymously through Shellpo boxes. And when she got into college, I paid a portion of her tuition each semester, never signing my name, just sending a check. I wasn't in her life, but I was never far away. And then, 3 weeks ago, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I had to. Hello, I said, cautious. There was a pause, and then a soft, uncertain voice replied, Hi. Is this James Carter? Yes, I said slowly. Who's calling? It's Emma. Emma Rourke. My heart stopped. I know this is random, she continued. Nervous, but I found something. Letters, old ones, hidden in a box at Mum's place. They had your handwriting, your name. I couldn't speak. My throat tightened. I need to know. Are you my father? The air left my lungs. Yes, I whispered. Yes, I'm your father. There was silence on the line, and then a shaky breath. I'm engaged, she said. His name is Mark. We're having a small dinner with family and friends next weekend, ... I want you to come. For the first time in 15 years, I was going to see my daughter again, not through a screen, not through binoculars from a parked truck, but face to face. But what I didn't know was that the truth I had spent a decade and a half burying was about to blow everything apart. Mark, the man my daughter loved, was about to learn exactly who I used to be, and when he didn't just walk out. He threw the ring across the room, and I don't blame him, because the truth isn't just ugly, it's dangerous. I arrived 20 minutes early, not because I was nervous, okay. Maybe I was, but because I hadn't seen my daughter in 15 years. And I wanted to be able to sit in the car for a minute and breathe. The address Emma gave me was a townhouse in a decent part of the city. Nothing flashy, but comfortable. The porch light was already on, and through the large windows I could see people moving around inside. Laughter, glasses clinking. Warm light and cozy chatter. A family gathering, just like the ones I used to dream of being part of again. Except now, I was the ghost showing up to dinner. I adjusted my shirt collar in the mirror, still wrinkled. No matter how many times I ironed it, tanned, stepped out, halfway up the walkway, I paused. There she was, Mr. standing at the door. Same eyes, same dimples. Her hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and she wore a navy blue dress that reminded me of her mother when we first met. Only she wasn't Clara. She was her own person now, stronger, smarter, and somehow she had found her way back to me. She opened the door, wide-eyed, unsure, but smiling. "Hi, Dad," she said, and I swear, I almost collapsed right there on the welcome mat. "Hi, sweetheart," I replied. My voice cracked like it hadn't been used in years. She stepped forward awkwardly, then hugged me. Not a long hug, not a movie moment, but real, human, warm. And then she stepped back and gestured inside. "Come on. Mark's dying to meet you." I told him you were a bit of a mystery. I smirked. Mystery. That's one way to put it. Inside, it was everything you'd expect from a cozy engagement dinner. Finger food on tiny trays. A cheese board that cost more than my monthly rent. One too many bottles of wine. Clara wasn't there, thank God. She had apparently declined the invitation. Which made me wonder if she was already panicking, wondering what Emma had discovered. Mark approached me with a grin that belonged to a man who thought everything in life was falling into place. Tall, athletic, slightly nervous energy, blue blazer, tan chinos. The type of guy who drinks almond milk voluntarily and actually flosses every night. "Mr. Carter, I'm Mark Whitmore," he said, extending his hand. "It's an honor to finally meet Emma's dad." I shook his hand, firm grip, too firm, trying to impress. "James is fine," I replied. "You don't have to, Mr. Me. That'll just make me feel older than I already am." He laughed, maybe a little too loudly. We sat down at the table, small talk, whether his job in tech, her job in marketing. They'd met during the pandemic on a Zoom trivia night, fell in love somewhere between name or the U.S. capitals and what's the square root of 144. Cute. But the whole time I sat there, nodding, smiling, chewing on overpriced brie. I knew it wouldn't last. Not after what Mark was about to learn. Because beneath his neat haircut and perfectly manicured confidence, he had no idea who I really was. It happened just after dessert. Mark had too much wine. You could see it in the way he leaned back, relaxed, gesturing like a TED Talk speaker. "So," he said, looking at me with a smirk, "Emma says, you used to be military. What did you do exactly?" "Logistics." Emma froze mid-sip. She glanced at me nervously. I gave a little smile, something like that. Mark chuckled. "Come on now, don't be modest. You've got that vibe. I bet you were some secret agent or something, right?" I gave him nothing but silence. And then, Emma spoke. Her voice soft, unsure. "Actually, there's something I just found out." Mark looked at her. I looked at her. She turned to him slowly. "My dad wasn't in logistics. He was in Black Ops. Intelligence division. The kind of stuff that doesn't exist on paper." The room fell dead quiet. Like someone hit the mute button on life. Mark blinked. "Wait, what?" I nodded. "Just once." "It's true," Emma added. "There are newspaper clippings, military files, photographs. My mum lied about everything." Mark laughed nervously this time. "So you're saying your dad was like, what, a spy?" "No," I said. "I was a ghost. I did things that don't have names. He blinked again. Then his smile faded, like he was watching the walls of his perfect life crack just a little. And that's when it happened. He leaned back in his chair, pulled the engagement ring box out of his pocket, and slowly opened it. "I'm sorry," he said, almost whispering. I need a minute." He stood up, walked toward the door, and then without a word, he turned around and threw the ring. Across the room, it hit the floor with a sharp clink and spun like a coin, wobbling, dancing, until it lay still. Emma gasped. Mark's hands were shaking. "I don't know what kind of family I'm marrying into. This is insane." Emma started. "I need to think," he snapped. "I can't marry someone whose life is built on lies, who didn't even know who her father really is." And then, he was gone. Door open, door shut. Silence. Emma sat frozen, eyes wide, her breath short. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. She wasn't crying, not yet, but her voice. It was hollow. "You lied to me, too," she whispered. "I didn't want to," I said gently, "but I thought I was protecting you. From Clara, from who I was." She stared down at the ring lying on the floor. "I don't even know what's real anymore." I wanted to say something, anything, but the words just didn't come, because truth is messy, and secrets, once spilled, don't go back in the bottle. We sat at that dinner table in absolute silence. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, it feels loud. Emma looked like she'd been sucker punched. Mark, he kept shifting in his chair like it was getting hotter by the second. Finally, he cleared his throat. "James, so, what did you do back then?" I tilted my head, pretending to think hard. "Well, Mark, I was what you'd call resourceful. Some people run businesses. I ran missions. Some people managed spreadsheets. I managed situations." Emma blinked. "You were in the military." I smiled. "Something like that." And then Mark, sweet, polite, "Yes ma'am, no sir." Mark lost it. He shoved back his chair, grabbed his phone off the table, and marched out of the house. We watched him pace back and forth in the driveway, like a man being told he just proposed to Liam Neeson. Emma ran after him, trying to talk him down. I sat back, sipped my lukewarm tea, and waited. 5 minutes later, Emma stormed back in. "Dad, what exactly did you do before you disappeared for 15 years? I didn't answer right away, because at that moment, Mark came back in with his phone in his hand and a pale, sweaty look on his face. "Your dad is James Carter, the James Carter. You were part of the Omega Directive." Emma looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "What the hell is the Omega Directive?" "Now, you ever try to explain to your daughter that her dad used to make people disappear for a living while also convincing her that you're safe enough to babysit her future kids? Yeah. Not an easy sell. But here's the kicker. You were in a classified shadow ops program, and you've been living as a retired plumber." I nodded. The benefits were better, and people complain less when your wrench slips than when your silencer jams. Emma dropped onto the couch. "I think I need air." Mark still hadn't sat down. He looked like he was trying to decide whether to call off the engagement or call the FBI. But instead, he asked one question. "Why didn't you tell her the truth?" And that's when I got serious. I looked at both of them and said, "Because the truth doesn't always keep people safe, and because, back then, I didn't think I'd live long enough to have a daughter who'd be old enough to fall in love." Yeah. That quiet hit the room again. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was thoughtful. Emma looked at me with new eyes. "Mark, well, he did something I never expected." He sat down and said, "Okay, but if anything shady shows up at the wedding, I'm hiding behind the cake." We all laughed, kind of, but it wasn't over, because what Mark did next, just a few days later, would change everything again. The ring didn't just clatter against the floor. It echoed, like it struck something deeper than wood or tile. It hit history. It hit grief. It hit 15 years of silence I had carefully wrapped around myself like armor, and shattered it in an instant. Emma didn't say a word. Not when Mark stormed out the door. Not when the ring lay spinning on the hardwood like a roulette wheel. Not when I stood up slow, aching, and reached for her shoulder. She just stared at the ring, like it might say something if it stopped moving. I finally spoke. Emma. Her voice was low, sharp. Why didn't you tell me? Not angry, not yelling, just that quiet, broken tone you only use when someone you trusted suddenly feels like a stranger. Why now? I sat back down slowly. My knees creaked, the kind of creak you don't get from office jobs. The kind that comes from crawling through tunnels and jumping from helicopters and running on adrenaline. Long past what's reasonable. I looked her in the eyes, because I was told, in that courtroom, that I was a danger to you. That if I stayed, I'd be taken away completely. Or worse, you'd be taken. So, I disappeared. She was shaking now. Not just from anger, from realization. From years of a false picture. The deadbeat dad story Clara had painted with such brutal precision. You paid for my college, didn't you? She asked suddenly. I nodded, double quotes, the checks. I always thought they were from some scholarship Mom never explained. You never missed a semester, even when I changed majors 3 times. I smiled faintly. You finally settled on marketing. Good choice. She gave me a sideways look. Not that good. I've been trying to sell oat milk for 9 months, and just like that, we cracked, both of us. The tension slipped for one fragile second. But then she said, you should have told me. I deserved the truth. I nodded. I didn't argue, because she was right. But before I could say more, her phone buzzed. She looked down. It's Mark. She stood, turned toward the window, and answered. I didn't hear everything, but I caught enough to know he was shaken. Still reeling, she was calm. Too calm. No, Mark, he didn't lie. He protected me. My mother lied, for years. Pause. Yes, I'm still figuring it out. But don't make this about you. Another pause, and then? If you're not strong enough to handle a complicated past, then maybe you're not strong enough for the future. I want. Click. She turned back around. He's not coming back tonight. I just nodded. Didn't expect him to. She sat down again, this time, closer. Is it true, everything? Were you really in black ops, government work? I looked her in the eye. There were years where I didn't sleep unless I had a gun under my pillow. I've used 5 names, spoken 6 languages, and survived 3 assassination attempts. But nothing scared me more than the idea of you growing up thinking I didn't love you. She stared at me for a long, quiet moment, and then, finally she leaned forward, rested her head on my shoulder, like she did when she was 5. I don't know how long we sat there, but, for the first time in 15 years, it felt like the war was over. Except one final battle was still coming. Because the next morning, Emma did something I never expected. She drove straight to Clara's house, and she asked one question. Why did you keep him from me? And that, my friend, opened a whole new chapter. Mark stood there, fists clenched at his sides. His jaw tightening like he was grinding his teeth into dust. You think I don't know who you are, James? He said finally. His voice like a slow boil about to erupt. Emma looked between us like she'd just stepped into a movie halfway through. Wait, what's going on? I kept my face still. Mark, if you know something, just say it. Oh, I will, he said, eyes narrowed. 15 years ago, the Carter name used to mean something. Until it got wiped off every federal list, blacked out like it never existed. Emma blinked. What? What are you talking about? Mark turned to her and said, your father isn't just some ex-handyman. He's James Carter, the guy who disappeared right after the Fall River sting operation. The guy who used to run black bag contracts overseas. He's not broken. He's buried deep under a fake identity. Now it was Emma's turn to freeze. Her lips parted like she wanted to ask 100 questions at once, but nothing came out. I sighed. I didn't want you to find out like this, she whispered. So, it's true, I nodded. It's true, all of it. Flashback time. What I was hiding, let me explain. Back before Emma was even born, I wasn't just a guy with a toolbox. I worked for a quiet branch of the government that handled things too dirty for headlines. Let's just say, if someone made the news, we already knew about them. 6 months earlier, I wasn't proud of the things I'd done. Operations that ended with no survivors. Secrets that could sink countries. But when Emma was born, everything changed. I didn't want her growing up with the shadow of what I used to be hanging over her life. So I left. I vanished. Cut ties with my past, my clearance, my team, my identity. Even faked financial failure so nobody would suspect a thing. It worked. Until Mark pulled something from his pocket. A worn-out photo. "Recognize this?" he asked. I did. It was from Istanbul. A warehouse op gone wrong. Only 5 people. Wherever in that room, 4 of them weren't breathing by the end of it. He tapped the back of the photo coordinates. Burn code. My initials. Emma stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" she asked, voice shaking. "Because I wanted you to live without looking over your shoulder," I replied quietly. "I wanted to be your dad, not your shadow." But Mark wasn't done. Mark suddenly walked over to the mantel. Picked up the engagement ring box he'd thrown earlier. He opened it slowly, and closed it again. "I came here today, planning to marry your daughter," he said. "I even prepared a speech. But then I got a call from a friend who's still active duty. Told me who you really were. And I had to know, was it true?" "I guess I have your answer," I said. He stared at me long and hard. "You know what scares me most?" he said. "Not the fact that you were some kind of ghost soldier. It's that you hid it so well. You could have been hiding anything." Emma looked down. "You think I can't make decisions for myself, Mark?" Mark turned to her. "Emma, your dad's past isn't just dangerous. It's radioactive." I couldn't help it. My sense of humor kicked in well. I muttered, trying to lighten the mood. "I always wanted to be described as radioactive. Sounds cool. Better than that broke guy with a lawnmower who smells like WD-40. Nobody laughed. Okay, tough crowd. I took the envelope from the safe, the one I hadn't touched in 15 years. Inside was everything. My old ID, the commendation letters, the photo of me shaking hands with the president, and a faded newspaper clipping. Decorated federal operative fakes death to dismantle crime syndicate from inside. Yeah, James Carter never died. He just disappeared. Because the job required it. I stared at the envelope, remembering the night I left Emma and her mother. It wasn't cowardice. It was a deal with the government. I go underground. They keep my family protected. But I never expected that protection to become a wall between me and my daughter. That night, I sat in the guest room with a bottle of scotch I hadn't touched yet, watching my life unravel from a distance. Suddenly knock knock. Emma. Tear streaked face, hoodie on. Mark not behind her. My heart skipped. She stood silently for a second, then said, "Dad, is it true?" I nodded. No words. Just a heavy nod. And then I handed her the envelope. She sat down across from me, pulling everything out slowly. Photos, papers, IDs. She wasn't crying anymore, she was just silent. "Why?" she whispered. And that word, it broke me. "I didn't choose to leave you, I chose to keep you alive." She looked up, her eyes piercing. "I would have chosen truth over safety any day," she said. "I know," I replied, "but back then, you were just a kid, and your mum. She wasn't ready to handle the danger. Neither of you were." We talked for 2 hours. And somewhere between the tears and anger, something shifted. Emma realized I didn't disappear because I didn't care. I disappeared because I cared too much. Then she hit me with something unexpected. "Mark didn't leave because of your past, Dad. He left because he didn't think I could handle it." I blinked. "What?" She sighed. "He said I was better off marrying someone with no baggage, that I deserved a simple life." "Whatever that means," I laughed. For the first time in what felt like a century, "Emma, you're my daughter. There's nothing simple about you." She smiled through tears. "Damn right." We both laughed, like real laughter. It wasn't fixed, but it was something. Then she said, "So, what now?" And I told her, "Now, we write our story, the real one, not the version the world made up." A week later, Emma and I stood on the courthouse steps. We weren't here for drama. We were here for closure. Emma had filed a restraining order against Mark. Turns out his attempt to defame me backfired spectacularly when my sealed record got quietly unsealed by a retired federal judge who still owed me a favor. Suddenly, the courtroom saw a different man than the one Mark painted me as. Not a threat, not a fraud, but a ghost, who came back with receipts. The judge took one look at the federal commendations, the classified operations, the quiet sacrifices, and asked Mark, "Do you realize who you just tried to humiliate in public?" Mark stammered something about Emma being unstable and too attached to me. And that's when Emma stood tall, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "You don't get to define me. I am my father's daughter, and I'm damn proud of it." Boom. That was the mic drop. Mark's jaw clenched. His ego bruised beyond repair. He walked out of the courtroom alone, head low, mumbling something about how none of this would have happened if people just stayed in their lanes. As for us, Emma and I walked out into the sunlight like a team forged in fire. We had a lot of catching up to do. Late-night burgers, telling stories she never heard. Her showing me the tattoo she got when she was 19 that she definitely regretted. Now, me teaching her how to throw a proper punch. Her teaching me how to use Instagram. And you know what? We found something that most people never do. A second chance. Here's what I learned. People will judge you based on what they see or think they know, but the truth, it's deeper than that. Sometimes protecting the people you love means being hated by them for a while, and sometimes the only way to find your way back is to stop hiding from the truth and trust that the people who matter will walk toward it with you. Emma and I, we're still healing, still laughing, still figuring things out, but this time, we're doing it together, and I'd take that over a fake, peaceful life any day, because when the world counted me out, when the courtroom laughed, when my daughter cried, all it took was one document, one truth, and one moment of courage, to rewrite everything.